What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. We've talked quite a bit about Sony raising the prices for PlayStation 5 consoles across the board and worldwide. Now it appears they have a new strategy, downsizing. Literally. This, though, just to keep the prices the same, and we'll go over that here today. Also, there has been a lot of discussion around a Nintendo Direct happening next week, and now a certain port is getting thrown around in reports. This one, though, big title from Capcom. We'll see what that's about. And we'll also be going over what it seems to be a game getting a re-reveal from Sony, one that's been missing since 2021, but could be lined up for a state of play coming here in a few weeks. All that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're gonna start today with Sega and Lego, as there's a set that's been spotted that's up on their website, you can see it here, of a Sega Genesis controller. The only issue is the Genesis controller set is marked off for the $19.99, as it appears to be what they call a gift with purchase, as in you have to buy enough stuff to, I guess, just get that thrown in to your cart. Here over on Lego Leak on Reddit, that appears that amount could be around $130, and that will be starting September 8th. The controller's kind of cool. I mean, it's 260 pieces, it's not like a massive set, but it is the classic 3-button Genesis controller, and then flipped around on the back, you have a scene from Sonic the Hedgehog out of Green Hill Zone, and has a nice little stand that comes with it. So pretty cool. Just unfortunate for people who may just want the $20 Sega Genesis controller for Lego, that you'd have to buy a bunch of other stuff to get that then tacked onto it. So I guess if you really want this, start thinking about ways to fill up a cart on the Lego's website, or see how much it gets marked up in the secondhand market on eBay. Also, we did get an announcement for Marvel Rivals with some new characters going in and a new system that's being supported. Well, new for them, but you can see some of the trailer here. This is announcing that Daredevil and Angela will be heading into the game September 12th, so pretty soon, about a week and a half from now. But on top of that, the PlayStation 4. Yes, the game is going backwards then, ported backwards to the PS4 console, and it's interesting because we've seen live service games cut support recently for the PS4, and now we're seeing Marvel Rivals do the complete opposite. They're working backwards to it, and I mean, they're just looking for more and more people who can play the game. I'm sure eventually then it will go to the Switch too. But for now, I guess they do see potential in the PlayStation 4, whether it's just numbers that they have or Sony shared with them, or just them doing surveys to see how many people are still on the last generation system from 2013. And it's just interesting to see it pop up, even though I think I'm ready for last generation to fade off in the distance. Kind of looks like in some ways it's just getting started, because Marvel Rivals is going to be around, I think, for years now, and that means the PS4 is going to be tagging along with it. Oh, and one of the best VR games that I've heard people talk about is Batman Arkham Shadow. Now, this was for the Meta Quest 3, and I think for RGT, that's what sold him on the entire headset, and he really liked it. I haven't played it at all, but it does seem we could see a sequel to it get released. Yeah, I was a little surprised to see this, just based on the way a meta is moving right now with things like VR and their big focus on AI, but we can see this. This is over on Upload VR, and this is talking with the voice actor in the game for Commissioner Gordon, where they say, same thing with the Batman Arkham Shadow VR game. We're about to start another one of these. I play Commissioner Gordon. Oh. This does happen a lot, right? It's just randomly someone who maybe isn't as into the gaming scene when it comes to NDAs or keeping quiet. It's got, yeah, we're working on a new game. Yeah, what do you want to know? So they're just kind of nonchalantly throwing it out there, but I guess there's a new Batman game for VR to follow up Arkham Shadow, which, hey, again, people really like that game, so it's no wonder if, of all the VR games, if Meta was going to pick, they're like, what's the closest to it? It's hard to say slam dunk for VR because it's VR and it's not like there's a ton of numbers out there to sell to, but for this, I mean, the Quest 3 is like the best-selling headset, I guess, so they at least have a population to sell to. Yeah, it's probably Batman. Makes the most sense, so I guess keep an eye out. Seems like something that might pop up at one of these Keighley events here coming up. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the PlayStation 5. And, well, the price isn't going up, so that's a positive, because whenever we discuss the idea of price fluctuations, it's usually working in one direction, and that's just up, up, up. Well, in this case, we're going down, and it's not for price, it's for the storage size of the system. This we can see over on D-Labs, as they tend to get a lot of information on the back end with retailers. Here, though, they're talking about the PlayStation 5 Slim, as there was a new identifying number that was spotted online in inventory. They say the storage space of the new PS5 Slim digital chassis E would be reduced to 825 gigabytes compared to 1 terabyte for the previous model, chassis D. The new version of the chassis E console would carry the CFI 2100 series, and more precisely the CFI 2116 reference. Note that this reduction would only concern the digital edition. The PS5 Slim Standard with disk drive, also based on the chassis E, would retain a 1 terabyte SSD. To date, this change has only been observed on the European version of the console. The 825 gigabyte label is even clearly visible on the new packaging. I wonder if it comes back with like 8K or anything, alongside the 4K and HDR logos. Well, apparently not. However, the specifics of the models intended for other regions remain unknown for now. So while this is specifically in European regions, it wouldn't shock me if this just kind of became a trend and Sony, as they are looking to be more creative, or I think at this point they're like out to like their last few ideas of how do we cut down on costs, because it's actually just getting more and more expensive to make these systems. This is the weird one where you go, we're going to take stuff away from the console and the price will stay the same. See, I mentioned them being more creative with ways to get these systems lowered in price. So I referenced back in the day when we had the PS3 Super Slim go down to 12 gigabytes. I don't know how many people out there remember this, but when that was being sold at places like Walmart, we had to deal with hard drive installations all the time because that 12 gigabytes would be filled up immediately, or in some cases wouldn't be enough for certain titles at all. So when that came out, it was $130 for the system, which, yeah, there you go. It's a cheaper system by cutting down the storage size. Here, though, we're going back to the original storage size. Yes, that's what it launched at back in the day, and I say back in the day, but in 2020, 825 gigabytes, rather than keep it at the 1 terabyte. I guess that is 175 gigabytes. I guess that's enough in terms of flash, or maybe just parts available that they saw and said, hey, this is just cheaper at manufacturing. Let's go that route. Let's introduce a new model, and that way we can keep it at that price point. That's the thing that's crazy to me. It's like, if you're really going to go for it, I mean, go for it and lower the price. I mean, go to 512 gigabytes, be like, hey, look, it's, I mean, it sounds bad. I normally say, hey, it's half the storage size, it's 400. Really, it's half the storage size, it's 450. Just kind of the way the world seems to work nowadays. But that's what I was more or less hoping to see, is then play around with some of the features. Yes, remove some, but there are many people out there who want a system maybe just for Fortnite or for Madden or for Call of Duty, which Call of Duty up that 512 gigabytes, no problem. But you get what I'm saying. They buy a couple of games a year. They have no problem deleting games off of their system to make room. So why not test that market and lower the price of the system? I think that's the better route to go, rather than do this weird 175 gigabyte reduction just to keep prices the same. We're in a strange time for gaming. I think we can all understand that just based on the way the market has moved across the board. Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, Nvidia, AMD. It's just, it's wacky stuff right now. Next up, let's talk about a big time port from Capcom that is currently being discussed as heading to the Switch 2 at some point in the future. And this is coming way of Dusk Golem, who tends to have good information on Resident Evil. They'll talk about canceled projects, at times stuff that's upcoming or that's in development. The issue you run into is when you talk about things that are in development that are very early on, they don't always make it to market. As I mentioned, sometimes they get canceled, and if you're someone trying to just put information out there and leak stuff, you can end up on the wrong side of it. Anyway, they have had some good information in the past, and this one's kind of intriguing because to me, it aligns with how Capcom is kind of viewing the market right now, with the Switch showing up and being this popular thing that is selling, especially in places like Japan, where they've mentioned that the PS5 specifically is kind of this barrier that they're trying to overcome, even though really Monster Hunter just needs to be better optimized. But anyway, we can see this posted. This is over on Nintendo Life, quoting Nintendo Everything and Dusk Golem, where they say, it won't be at around the bush. They're saying, I won't be around the bush. Resident Evil Requiem should be releasing on PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch 2. Seems this was kind of known behind the scenes and in the grapevine. I'm not the first person to say this publicly actually just corroborating, thinking or talked about it with 5 different people in the last few weeks, and know another guy with a good reputation said as much less than a week ago. So not from me, but I have been hearing the same thing. Unsure if it'll be at launch, my guess is it'll be a different version with different tech, sort of like the 360, PS3, Wii, PS2 era, since some features of Requiem like ray tracing are focused on modern platforms. But if the question is it happening or not, the answer pretty much is, yeah, it's happening. Now, that's interesting to talk about ray tracing since Star Wars Outlaws is out today, and I had a chance to check it out a bit early. That has ray tracing like intertwined and baked into the game, and it runs pretty well, like better than people were expecting on the Switch 2. So you hear about that with Resident Evil Requiem, and it does make me wonder if Capcom would be able to still kind of work around that for the Switch 2. Now, things like resolution being lowered, frame rate being cut, all of that I think works into it and is most likely. Also, the mention of PlayStation 4 isn't too surprising since Capcom has done that. Remember, with Resident Evil 4 Remake, they announced that a PlayStation 4 version would indeed be releasing after they had already been talking about it for like the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series, and so on. And it wouldn't surprise me if they decide, you know what, let's see if we can get Requiem also running on the PlayStation 4 alongside of the Switch 2. Like, why not? If you're already kind of looking to move to the Switch 2, if it works on the, or if you're working on the PS4, okay, cool, it works there. Let's see how it does on the Switch 2. So Capcom's still exploring a bunch of options for just more people to get their games to, and that does kind of tie in perfectly to how they were talking about with Monster Hunter Wilds, where they're just looking for more people to sell to. So it's not shocking, really, that Capcom, if it can run on the Switch 2, and it can run on the PlayStation 4, that they would make this happen. But as mentioned here, probably not at launch, although who knows, they could surprise everyone over the next couple of months and show up and be like, yep, there it is, logos start popping up alongside of it on the end card, Switch 2, PS4. For now, though, I would think maybe that's something that happens later on in 2026, as right now we're heading towards that end of February 2026 release for Resident Evil Requiem on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Next up, let's talk about 007 First Light, as there was a state of play that happened yesterday, and it went on for quite some time. While the whole thing says it's 50 some odd minutes long, I think the first 15 minutes was just a countdown timer. So it is closer to the 40 minutes or so with 30 minutes of gameplay that they had discussed previously. But I watched it. I took some notes here, so let's go over it. What we had from IO and Sony in this event. So at the top, it did start with this driving sequence that was leading up to what appeared to be a complex. Turns out it was a big hotel. Very scripted, on rails dialogue. This was kind of the setup of this portion of the game to kind of get you acclimated to the environment and then also some of the characters there. And when you did get into gameplay, it's like this third-person investigation, infiltration that you were trying to pull off here into the hotel. It's kind of cool. They had like you were kind of hiding in bushes and he shot like the dart at it. So there's so much stuff, I think, from Hitman working into this. You also had the ability to scan the wall. It looked like you had certain pipes or ledges light up just to show you what you could grab onto. So you're distracting guards. You're working your way into the hotel. Again, a lot of Hitman stuff really shown here as you're working there. But once you get into it, I noticed there were a lot of NPCs being shown. It's very dense, kind of trying to showcase a very alive setting is how I describe it. Yeah, dialogue options, and the idea, I guess, was to build a case, but no time for that because we jump ahead to a classic car chase scene. And afterwards, there's a third-person action sequence that's taking place. Your gunfire everywhere. The takedown animations look pretty good. I thought they were smooth. They worked into the combat nicely with the camera cuts. And the shooting itself looked pretty concise, looked tight. But then the issues came up. And something exploded. That's it. Once something exploded, man, that frame rate exploded along with it. There are red barrels everywhere, so they just kept on blasting, and man, it was tough. That was not the best footage, I hope, that they had to show, because it needs some work. It does. The airplane section looked kind of rough too. Like when you got up in the airplane and boxes and crates were flying around, it was struggling just about everywhere. Because look, here's the thing. I'm watching this. The concept looks cool. The game itself looks awesome. I mean, it looks like an over-the-top action movie vibes in there with the game. I like what I'm seeing so far. That performance just needs to be smoothed out. I think they have something. Really, it's kind of like this mix of Hitman and Uncharted. I saw someone say, oh, that kind of reminds me a bit of Splinter Cell with some of the sneaking sequences they showed after the gameplay with some of the developer sit-down. Yeah, I think the ingredients are here. Like, they got something. They just got to make sure it doesn't show up and run at like 8 frames a second with some of the, when barrels start exploding. That's all. I think once they get that done, at least from the 30 minutes or so they've shown here, I am into it. I'm going to be picking this up. It's coming out March 27th, 2026. Yes, it's a game key card on the Switch too. Let's get that out of the way now. But I like what I'm seeing here so far with 007 First Light. Again, performance issues aside, I think this could be a really cool breakout here for IO Interactive with what they're doing with the Bond franchise. It being kind of the early days for 007 and kind of seeing their rise there into the ranks, if you will. But pretty cool. Again, the performance stuff. Let me know what you thought about that showing, though. Okay, and if you also noticed it when things started blowing up, where you're like, "Whoa, this thing's having a hard time." And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a state of play that we are all expecting to happen ahead of Tokyo Game Show. Tokyo Game Show is like the last week of September, so really over the next 3 weeks, Sony can have this event, and I think it's mostly going to be setting up stuff for Tokyo Game Show. A lot of partners, I'm sure, will present there that will also be at Tokyo Game Show. But there is always the question, what would Sony have here first party wise? Because they have a lot of studios that are working on live service stuff, had to cancel things, and have been fairly quiet since their original reveal. I don't know, like Insomniac with Wolverine back in 2021? Well, with a new report that just got published yesterday out of Insider Gaming, we can see this, where they say, according to sources who wish to remain anonymous as they couldn't talk about company plans, PlayStation is currently planning its next State of Play event towards the end of September. Other sources revealed that Insomniac Games' Wolverine is almost certainly going to be at the event, as the production of its next trailer has now been completed. If the game doesn't appear at State of Play, then the trailer will undoubtedly be released in the next few months, with the Game Awards being the next likely candidate. So I want to stress this point a bit. There is the chance that Wolverine is not at the State of Play that should happen before Tokyo Game Show, because at least they describe why they're coming to that conclusion in the way that, hey, the trailer is done, they've edited it, they've cut it all together, it's ready to go. But we're kind of just pointing to the State of Play because it's within proximity, it would make sense to be there, and it would make sense to close out the State of Play with a big title like Wolverine. That's kind of the way that Sony will do this, where there's like Sorrows, for example, where they close out with that. Close out with Wolverine. Give us another look at this game that's been, I mean, like this is 4 years, more than 4 years now since it was first shown. And I mean, the fact that we've seen it in unfortunate leaks through Insomniac, where there was the whole ransomware thing that happened and people were porting it over to PC. It was crazy. People were moving it to PC. Now that they have a chance to show it again on their own terms, hopefully to close out a State of Play. Otherwise, I mean, Sony doesn't seem to be opposed to handing some of these trailers off to Jeff Keighley to show at his events, like we saw recently with Intergalactic. So at the very least, we should see Wolverine by the end of this year, hopefully sooner rather than later in the next couple of weeks at the State of Play. And please, Insomniac, all you've shown us for this game is a very brief cinematic with claws coming out of Wolverine's fist. Show up with gameplay, even if it's cut together and stuff. If we have just glimpses of how the game's looking, and then you eventually can have a dedicated State of Play like we just saw with 007, where you do 20 minutes or something of just unedited gameplay, that can work, but show up with more than another cinematic trailer. Let's get the ball rolling here for Wolverine. I mean, really, it's been 4 years since the last time we saw it. Let's start talking about maybe 2026 for its release, and let's show up here with what the game itself actually looks like. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, if you own a PS5, which version do you have? The launch model with the disc drive was leading the way there, 69%. Good job, everyone. I feel like you did that on purpose. Then we have, actually, the Pro console was number 2. Interesting. 14%. The slim version, with or without the disc drive, it's either or, 12%. And then the launch model digital version, a little surprised. That one's only 5%. People really did not go for that. I mean, hey, I still think we see those numbers for digital versus physical, and I don't know, something about that just still seems kind of off to me, because I do hear about many people with PS5s that just buy the physical version, the disc. And I know there are many people like the digital side, it's just easier, it's more convenient, sure. But and that just might be for me because it's more anecdotal as to the people that I'm talking to, or even looking online, more collectors than anything else really. So that, yeah, I can kind of skew things, but even seeing this, it's like, wow, people really did opt for the disc drive enabled PS5 at launch Although I still think Sony provided more of those than the digital version because they were just flat out losing money on the digital version originally at $400 out of the gate. Whereas the disc-based one, I think they were either break even or, believe it or not, maybe even making a little bit on top of it. Enough though not to really be hurt by it. So that's all I can really figure there. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from M2365B, who says, Capcom is delusional. Wild sold well at launch, but dropped off due to poor optimization on console and PC. Yeah, I think they're underestimating the power of word of mouth after launch. So if you do a good marketing job and it's a popular IP like a Monster Hunter, you're going to sell really well at launch. But from there, they've noted that sales fell off a cliff. There's like 10 million, but they sold 500,000 copies after that, after the initial month. They're like, what happened? It was incredibly hard for people to recommend this game on PC. It was difficult for people to recommend it on consoles because the game doesn't run well. So you go, this game is really fun, but the frame rate's not good, or the resolution struggles, or it's crashing on my PC, so I really can't tell you to go buy it. Whereas if you have something like Expedition 33 that comes out, no, it hasn't sold what Monster Hunter Wilds has, but I feel like that game benefited heavily from word of mouth, where we're all telling people to buy the game. Hey, this game's really good. You should pick it up. You know what? You should also pick it up physically. If you download it on Game Pass, maybe think about also buying the game later on when it comes out on disc for, say, the PS5, because it's that good of a game. And then we saw the sales continue to climb and climb and climb and climb. 3 to 4 million copies selling, and a lot of that was just people who were excited to legitimately help the company sell their game. So I think that's something Capcom has to realize. If they are going to rely, say, on the PC market, they got to put more effort into those ports and just kind of let the fan base go to work for them, really. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to see exactly how that Star Wars Outlaws port turned out for the Switch 2. Well, I have some 4K gameplay and some of my thoughts on that version of the game in a video, and I'll leave that right below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.